Do we need this? Colleen? Colleen? Do I need this? Hmm? So, is that okay? All right, well, good morning. Thank you for your presence here today. And allow me to say, please, a short word of thanks to all of you, or no, many of you anyway, for your friendship over 17 years. I've come to know you, and we've had many discussions and many interesting moments, and they create a relationship that is sometimes stormy, like all good relationships, but was deeply appreciated by me, so I thank you. Today, however, I'm most deeply grateful to our Holy Father, Pope Francis, for appointing Bishop Blase Cupich as the 9th Archbishop of Chicago. Archbishop Cupich is well prepared for his new responsibilities and brings to them a deep faith, a quick intelligence, personal commitment, and varied pastoral experience. Archbishop Cupich will be formally installed on November 18th at Holy Name Cathedral. For the next 2 months, he will function as Bishop of Spokane, and I will have the authority of the office of Archbishop of Chicago. Both of us are committed to a smooth transition that will serve the best interests of our local dioceses, the priests and people, the religious, deacons, lay ministers, and the faithful lay people of Chicago and of Spokane. Allow me now to present to you Archbishop Blase Cupich.
Thank you, Your Eminence. I am grateful for your kind words and all that you've done to make me feel welcome here. I want to say, first of all, thank you to all of you in the media for being here. I can imagine that you treasure your time with your families on the weekends, and so coming on Saturday is probably something you would rather avoid doing. So I do appreciate you coming here today because your service allows me to be present to people throughout the Archdiocese and to be able to communicate to them. So I welcome you, and I'm very grateful. Yesterday, when I was coming in to Chicago, sitting next to a man on the airplane, he said, "Well, are you coming home?" And I thought for a moment, I said, "Yeah, I guess I am." So everybody has made me feel at home here from the very beginning, and ways that have really supported me. One of the things last night that I learned is that the superior of the religious women who help at the residence her name is Sister Theodosia. Sister Theodosia was the name of my first grade teacher, a Benedictine sister from Atchison, Kansas. And she always told me that she knew I would become a doctor, a physician, because my penmanship was so poor. But God had other plans for me, and part of that plan, it seems, through the decision of the Holy Fathers to be here with all of you. So I'm very grateful for the welcome that I've received. Me gustaría también saludar a mis hermanos y hermanas hispanos de la Arquidiócesis de Chicago. A ustedes quiero decirles que vengo aquí como su pastor, pero también como su hermano. Y espero poder conocer a cada uno de ustedes en los próximos meses y años para poder transmitirles la alegría del Evangelio mientras compartimos el camino de la vida. Me gusta mucho estar con las familias de inmigrantes, porque mi familia también era inmigrante. Le agradezco al Señor haberme dado esta inesperada oportunidad de poder ser su servidor en esta gran ciudad. Mi puerta siempre va a estar abierta para ustedes, para escucharlos y para acompañarlos. Yo sé que necesito mejorar mi español, seguiré estudiando para ello, y espero que me corrían cuando cometa errores, y no solo errores de idioma, sino también de los otros, que también seguiré cometiendo. I'm very grateful to all of you today, and I want to assure you, as I say here in the press release that you're going to receive, the Holy Father's appointment of me to Chicago humbles but also encourages me. I am grateful to God for giving me this blessed opportunity to be his servant in this great city and this great local church. And as Pope Francis began his pastoral ministry in Rome by asking the people to pray for him, so too now I bow my head in the hope that everyone in Chicago will pray for me in the days ahead.
Archbishop Delgett, may I ask a question?
Yes, I'm going to ask Colleen to help me because she said there might be one or two questions.
Can I ask you, since the Archbishop doesn't know all of you like Cardinal George does, he hasn't had the 17 years, if you'd stand up and identify your name and your outlet so that he understands who's asking the question. Marianne, you can continue.
Archbishop Marianne Ahern with NBC
Hi,
here in
Marianne.
Chicago. Nice to meet you. Welcome. Many are anxious to hear about so many things, but let's start with your priorities. I'm sure that you have many to consider, but what might be the agenda, the list of things? There's finances that are, of course, difficult. There are schools. There are families of Catholics that wonder about divorce, annulment, all these kinds of issues. But what might be your priority list?
Well, with regard to just take that first item of finances, I've always learned that money follows mission. I think if you get the mission right, the money will come. People will be supportive of that. But I also think that my priority as a priest and now as a bishop for the past 16 years is to recognize that God is already at work in the lives of people. People come to us as priests, as ministers of the church, because they've already experienced God. And what they want us to do is to confirm, support, and nourish them in that call. So my priority is to really be attentive to what's already happening, the great things that God is already doing. Pope Francis, in talking to some missionaries recently, said that, remember, when you go to those missionary lands, God, the Holy Spirit has already been working there. So pay attention to that. So my first priority and main priority is just to be attentive to all that God's doing here already.
Excellency, I'm Jay Levine from CBS in Chicago.
Hi, Jay.
We've spoken at Bishop's conferences in the past.
Oh, I recall that now, yes.
I'm certain that the appointment was somewhat of a surprise to you. Could you share with us how you got it, when you got it, and your thoughts about what is obviously a daunting challenge?
Well, surprise doesn't come close to the word that would come to mind for me. I learned about 10 days ago, the papal nuncio, Archbishop Vigano, called me and began the conversation by saying, I have great news for you. And he sounded like the angel Gabriel, and so the line that came to me was, how can this be? Mary, huh? But I was quite overwhelmed and very surprised. We had just begun a pastoral planning program, and this week I issued a pastoral letter because it was planned to do so on priorities that we're moving forward with. So yes, it was quite surprising to me, and he said right after that, as there was this long pause because my breath was taken away, he said, now I hope you accept, and that's really what he wanted me to get out of me at that point. And I said, you know, I've never asked for anything, I've never said no to the church, and so yes, I'll do it.
And how long did it take for it to sink in what you had ahead of you?
It's still sinking.
Pardon me, Bishop Alan Kraszewski from ABC7 Chicago. You might remember we spoke at the Bishop's Conference.
Yes, I do now that you say that.
I remember you saying at that time when I talked to you, you may have been quoting another at the time, but you said that Pope Francis had to find the right saint to fill the niche that is Chicago. Apparently, from this decision, Pope Francis has found the right person. I don't know how that, in hindsight, fits in to what you told me back then, but I'm curious to hear from you. When you hear some people describing you as a moderate, and some might say, well, what does that mean? How would you describe yourself?
Well, first of all, I'm no saint, and this is a pretty big niche. So I hope that what the Holy Father has done, I can measure up to the responsibility. I think that, give me the second part of that question again. I'm sorry.
The second part is, when you hear some people describe you as being
moderate.
a moderate, what does that mean to you? Would you describe yourself in that fashion or not necessarily?
Well, I guess labels are hard for anybody to live up to one way or another. I just try to be myself, and I try to learn from great people. You've had great people here in this archdiocese pastor you, and I'm following a great man. So I'm going to learn from him and just try to pick up from other individuals that have really demonstrated great leadership in the life of the church. So it's not my agenda. It's not what I feel. I'm going to try to be attentive to what the Lord wants. That's maybe if there's moderation in that, then I'm a moderate.
Dina?
Hello, I'm Dina Baer with WGN. I want to follow up on that just a bit. Clearly, you are continuing the mission that Francis Cardinal George led this archdiocese with for the last 17 years. But considering that I think philosophically you are a little bit different, might the Catholics in this archdiocese see a bit of a different tone?
Well, I think everybody brings their own gifts and talents and experiences. I think if you look at the history of the various 8 predecessors, archbishops here, they have all brought something different. And so, yes, I think that it's reasonable to expect that there will be different emphases and different approaches, and that's normal. I remember when the Cardinal came here 17 years ago, they were asking him, are you going to be like Cardinal Bernardine, and pressed him on that quite a bit. And he had the greatest line. He said, well, maybe this is another reason why the church is against cloning. So
Bishop, Larry Yellen from Fox 32 News. Along that same line, and maybe there's a pastor-client privilege here, but what sort of advice has Cardinal George given to you about navigating some of the difficult issues that Chicago faces?
we really haven't gotten into any details. I just arrived about 18 hours ago. We've had a couple of conversations just about details before coming here. So to be honest with you, we haven't had those in-depth discussions. But I know that he's served by a great staff of people who have proven very experienced in their own capacities. So I think we're going to get into the weeds eventually, and I anticipate that will come sooner rather than later. But I'm just not equipped at this moment to respond to that fully.
Hi, I'm Carla Johnson. I'm with the Associated Press here in Chicago. Before I was with the AG in Chicago, I was with the Spokesman Review in Spokane, Washington.
Oh, great.
So I hope you enjoy Chicago as much as I have.
They've been very nice to me in my 4 years that I've been there.
As reported in some of the Catholic press, do you in fact oppose or discourage protests outside abortion clinics? Are they too confrontational?
Yes, thank you. That's a great question. I've always supported the rights of people to express themselves, particularly with regard to very critical and important issues of the day. So I've always, whatever the issue is, I think that public manifestations of those sorts to express one's views in a peaceful way is very important. And I think we always have to look, too, at how we make sure that those are done that really produce something in the long run.
Hi, I'm Lynette Colston, WBZ. Nice to meet you. I wanted to ask you, somebody had asked about the tone, if there might be a shift in tone, and I wonder what that shift might be.
Well, I don't know if there's going to be a shift. I think maybe you're going to have to perceive yourself about my presentation here today and in the weeks ahead. That's really going to be up to you to determine. I don't come with any intentionality. I'm just going to be myself, and that's all I can do.
I have 2 questions, actually. One is, a lot of the lead up to this was whoever the Pope appoints to Chicago is going to send a loud and clear message about the direction of the American church. And I would like to know, was that blown way out of proportion, or do you see, yes,
of the message, part of the mission here. When you got the call, I'm wondering if it came up when the nuncio called you about that. And then the second part of my question is, my Spanglish is so bad. Did you say in that Spanish portion that you spoke Korean, or that you needed to
No.
Korean when you were in Spokane, and you need to study up on
No,
Spanish?
you need to take more Spanish. Either that or I have to work on accent reduction. I think the Holy Father is a pastoral man. I think that his priority is not to send a message, but a bishop. And that's what he's sending here. Someone to serve the needs of people. So I think that I wouldn't want to in any way overly politicize or put this in a different context. I think he cares a lot about people, and he took his time, and he wanted to provide a pastor. And so I think he sent a pastor, not a message. Please.
Stan.
Yes, go ahead. I need to, just in case I missed something, this is my good brother here who does everything.
Arzobispo, mi nombre es Viviana Ávila de Univisión. Le pregunto, ¿dónde aprendió español y cuáles son sus prioridades?
México.
En México.
México.
¿Y cuáles son sus prioridades para ayudar a los latinos que son parte de la Iglesia Católica aquí en Chicago?
My priorities for, I got that right, my priorities for the Hispanic, did I get that right? Yeah, good, okay. I would say my priorities for the Hispanic people are my priorities for all the people. Namely that I have learned over the years that I've been a bishop in South Dakota as well as here, is that every culture brings their own deep spirituality. That's true for the Hispanic people, but it's also true for the Native American people that I served in western South Dakota. I've always said that the Native American people, for them, the curtain between time and eternity is much thinner. And that's a trait that they have in their spiritual life. With Hispanic people, it is important, their own family life, their own experience. So I've always tried to relate to Hispanic people in such a way that lets them know that I'm part of their family. And so I think that's very important. At the same time, I don't want to dance around the issue that we need comprehensive immigration reform. Our Bishops' Conference has called for that. It's time for political leaders to put aside their own agendas and to take up this issue. And so I want to take this opportunity to urge that again. Every day we delay it is a day too long, and we should move on it today.
Francine Knowles from the Chicago Sun-Times. Can you tell me, what are you hoping will come out of the upcoming Synod on the Family?
Well, the upcoming Synod is the Extraordinary Synod, and that means that it is the presidents of bishops' conferences who are coming and those who are appointed by the Holy Father. Their job is to really plan the next Synod and to give a framework to that. So my hope would be that they would do so in a way that allows all the issues to be widely discussed and considered, and that there would be a framework so that there really is open, candid, and honest discussions about the critical pastoral issues of the day. So this one is not going to resolve any of the various issues that have been reported in the media. This is a planning moment for the next Synod, the Ordinary Synod in 2015. So that would be my hope.
Morning, Mitch Smith of the New York Times. I wanted to know, so you have about 2 months before you begin leading the Archdiocese in Chicago.
Right.
What are the things you're hoping to learn or prioritize in that time, as well as what are you hoping to accomplish in, say, your first 6 months after you do assume leadership?
I think that since I really don't know enough about what are the pressing issues, I'm going to have to delay a response on that. I guess my first priority is to get to know people, get to know, this is an enormous upgrade, so to speak, huh? We had 100,000 Catholics in Eastern Washington, and I had 27,000 Catholics in South Dakota. What is there, 2.2 million Catholics here? And I want to get to know each and every one of you. So So I hope you'll be patient with me. I want to tell you, people of the media, I will be available as time goes on to address these questions when I really do find myself in a position to do it intelligently. I can't do that today.
Bishop, for some who may be asking then, a person coming from that size of a diocese to the Archdiocese of Chicago, can you tell us a little bit about the experiences you've had in Spokane, for instance, the financial issues that you faced there, the legal challenges you faced there, et cetera, that may be a benefit to you here as you come in?
Yes, I would say that what I've learned in both of my experiences as a diocesan bishop is that there are willing people who want to help, who are competent, and it's just important for me to put aside my ego and my agenda that comes from me and be open to how God's working through them to help me carry on the responsibility. The mistakes that I've made over the years have begun with the fact that I've decided in my own mind how things have to go. But it's only after I consult with people, pray about it, that the right answer comes. I think it's really important to keep in mind that it's not my church, it's Christ's church. I have to be attentive to His voice in the lives of the people, in the Word of God, in the way that He communicates to all of us, for the pointers that He gives. And so we had some very complex issues in the state of Washington with the bankruptcy. And there's still some issues that have to be resolved. We have resolved a good number of them. But we made progress with the help of God, with the great ability and insight of a lot of people, and so I'm going to make sure that I tether myself to the advice of good people.
Could we also get your response, because I know the child sex abuse crisis has been something that's dominated the headlines. Where do you feel that stands? Where has the church addressed it? There of course are folks, victims, who are going to be outside of this news conference, and they already are somewhat wary, as they've been many times before, but should they be?
Well, I would say that we have made progress. We have done a great deal. In fact, I was recalling right after my appointment that this question could come up. And the thought that came to my mind was that in 2002, I was in Dallas when we did the charter. And then I became the chair of the Committee for Child Protection for the Bishops' Conference. But in that moment, when we did the charter, I know from my firsthand experience, we would not have zero tolerance with regard to the issue of child protection if we're not for this man here. He was the one who made it happen in the discussions in Rome. He's the one who pressed for it more than anybody, against some formidable opposition. And so not only do we have that in the Church of the United States, we have it universally now. So that is a very important piece. I've also given a number of talks, presentations to various groups when I was the chair of child protection, and I recall for them that moment in the Scriptures where the disciples aren't getting it right. They're arguing, they have their egos in the way, and Jesus all of a sudden takes a child and puts it in the center of the room and says, take the child first. The child is first. Make the child the first priority. I think if we do that on a regular basis, we're going to get it right. So my hope is that we keep the focus on protecting children, about healing to people who have been victimized by clergy. It's always going to be imperfect. It's never going to be enough. But we can try to do as best we can with our limited resources, but also with the great grace of God to bring about healing in many deep, on many deep levels. So I'm committed to doing that, and I'm not asking people to all of a sudden say that they find me a credible individual because they really don't know me. I will just say that I'll work hard at this and make it an important part of my ministry.
I'm hoping also we'll get a chance to ask a few questions of Cardinal George later on. But first, we talked.
Please, go ahead now.
You spoke in Spanish, and I'm hoping my tutors will better than mine is, that you're from a family of immigrants and therefore
Right.
feel comfortable and will reach out to immigrants. Will there be a special relationship between you and the Croatian community, given your...
I hope so, and I especially if they have really wonderful sarma, which is a cabbage roll, and povitica, which is a nut bread. So I'm sure now I'm going to get inundated with it. But I hope so. But also I know there's a sizable ethnic community from Eastern Europe, the Polish people particularly, and so I hope that's the case. One of the reasons, by the way, that November 18th was chosen is because it's the feast day of the dedication of the Basilica of St. Peter and St. Paul in Rome, so those two basilicas. And my home parish, where my grandparents came and founded, was St. Peter and Paul. The other reason I like that day is because the founders of the Sacred Heart Sisters, she celebrates her feast day, and so it's a way of honoring religious women, but also she had a lot of care and concern for Native people. So all of those three seem to just come together very well for me as that date was selected.
We'll take one more question, and then we'll have Cardinal George answer a
Okay,
few
there you have
questions
it,
for you.
the introduction of the new Archbishop designate, Blase Cupich, arrived in Chicago last night, being introduced this morning by Cardinal George, who is retiring. He has resigned, and Archbishop Cupich will be officially
people of
installed
faith
on November
really
18th. We will
need
have
to
continuing
work
coverage
together
of
for the
his
common good.
appointment this morning
Bring
on
a different
myfoxchicago.com, and be sure to
And
join us
we have
tonight after
bonds
college
that,
football.
can strengthen
Thanks
one
for
another.
joining us.
We have a responsibility, I think, as people of faith to contribute that which is uniquely ours. So it's not just a matter of looking at the relationships that we can build one to another, which are important, but how can we work in such a way that we serve the common good? And that would be my aim and hope. And I know that it has been the Cardinals. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll take a switch here. We'll have Cardinal George answer a few questions for all of you. There wasn't a question, but I would like to at least recognize that we have the representative from Extension Magazine here too, Father Jack Wall. So if you have questions later, you can ask him.
Cardinal, you had talked about...
Wait.
Cardinal gets up, one at a time. Mary Ann,
Just wait. Let me say, you know, that when you're talking about how he would be described, I described him as well prepared for his new responsibilities, bringing to them a deep faith, a quick intelligence, personal commitment, and varied pastoral experience. And I hope that you've seen that in action in just a very few minutes, and you'll see it in action for many years to come. I'm very grateful to him and to the Holy Father. Thank you. So if you then would care to ask a few questions, I'm sure there'll be other occasions, but if you've got something now, I'd be happy to try to help.
Cardinal, you had mentioned so many times that you had wanted to meet your successor. You never had that opportunity.
That's right.
Why is that important, and can you give us a sense of what you hope to tell him?
I think Archbishop Cupich has already indicated why it's important. That is that there are dimensions to being Archbishop that are unique, and it's a post that only one person holds at any one time. And so if you can profit from somebody's experience in this particular archdiocese in a way that I hope to help him profit, then it should be good for the people of God, which is what he wants and what I want. So we'll see. But I'll have a chance now to talk to him in these 2 months, off and on anyway. He has a lot of responsibilities still in Spokane, and I have to continue here. But there will be moments of communication. And after that, I'll be available to him for anything that he wants.
Jay?
2 questions, Eminence, about emotions. Relief and surprise.
Aha.
You get what you wanted to be able to retire, the first Archbishop of Chicago to retire. Is that a relief to you? And was his appointment as much of a surprise to you as it apparently was to him?
You know, Jay, the first time we ever talked, you started out asking, how do I feel? And after a half hour of that, I said, Jay, why don't you ask me what I think? And we've been at this ever since. You keep asking how I feel, and I keep responding in another way. But I have realized the importance for communicating for what you bring up, and I'm grateful for the lessons you've taught me. But again, they're lessons. Anyway, well, first of all, a sense of great gratitude to our Holy Father that he has acceded to my request to move along with the appointment, and great gratitude that he has appointed such an able and experienced man who will serve well as Archbishop of Chicago. I leave this church in better hands than mine. And so a sense of great gratitude. I also have to say there's a certain sense of relief. You know, I've been a bishop for many years, and before that I was a religious superior. And in a sense, in those jobs, as you can imagine, you are hostage to what hundreds and even thousands of people do, over which you have no control. So every morning I wake up and think, well, what did Jay say over television last night? And what was written in the Tribune or the Sun-Times, because I'm on for it in some way. And I have to confess, it'll be a relief not to read the papers with that vision in mind, but just to get information and to applaud, oh, that's a nice story, or it isn't. So that's a certain sense of relief, it certainly is. And also relief because, as I've said, not only is it good to have a change after 17 years, but it's also necessary because in the nature of my progress in this life, I'm at a point where I have to spend a lot more attention to health problems than I had to before, both because of the cancer and new treatments and danger of infections constantly and some post-polio problems. And this is a full-time job. So I am relieved and grateful that now somebody who can do it full-time will be in charge. And I can pray, and I always will, and I hope help pastorally in different ways, hear confessions, do confirmations, et cetera, be available. But nonetheless, it'll be a very different schedule. And others who have retired, I've asked them, how has it been? He said, well, it is strange. One moment you're at the center of everything, and the next moment you're not. And you have to adjust to that. And in 2 months' time, I'll tell you what it's like, how I feel at that time.
If I can just respond,
Yes.
Eminence, you taught us a lot more than we taught you. And we're grateful.
Well, thank you very much. Okay, thank you.
Eminence Alan Krzyzewski, thanks so much for allowing us this opportunity. I do want to ask you in terms of how the transition, as you see it, will take place, as you lay it out between now and November 18th, and even beyond that. What will go into effect now? What will happen to allow for a smooth transition and the sharing of information that you've talked about yourself in terms of as a mentor or as someone who's experienced it and passing on that knowledge to your successor?
Well, first of all, I'll ask him what he wants to know, and then I'll tell him what I think he should know, must know. We've already last night exchanged, I gave him some books about the legal position of Archbishop of Chicago vis-a-vis a number of other corporations. What will happen, I think, is every time now I come before a decision that I know is going to have consequences beyond my tenure, I'll pick up the phone and ask him, you know, this is the way we're going, it's well prepared, I think this is the right way to go, but do you have any problems with it, because you're going to have to live with it. So I think in that way we'll start the discussion.
Okay, one more question.
Specifically on the clergy sex abuse cases, what steps will you take to make sure your successor has a full understanding of the cases here in Chicago that still need attention?
Well, he'll be fully briefed. We spoke about that briefly last night. No, when I came, I asked, what's the situation here? And they sat me down for half a day, and they went through every single case. And that will happen here, too. Sure.
Cardinal George, how are you feeling health-wise, and do you still plan to visit Pope Francis in November?
I hope to have the strength. There are other reasons to go to Rome in November, meetings, et cetera, that I have, because I'm still part of different conferences. You know, my title is Cardinal after I'm through with being Archbishop of Chicago, but being Cardinal has nothing to do with Chicago. I'm Cardinal because I'm the pastor of that little church on the Tiber Island called St. Bartholomew's in Rome. So therefore, Cardinals continue until they're 80 years old, if I live that long, as advisors to the Pope through the various committees they belong to. So I have those meetings to go to if I want to. and I would like to continue to contribute to the public life of the church somewhat. Besides that, I'd also like to talk to the Pope personally. I haven't had a chance to do that just because he's a nice man, and I would like to get to know him a bit better. So if I have the strength, I'll do that. As I said, there are problems that come up, particularly with this regime. The reactions to drugs are unknown, and so all of a sudden I find different phenomena that I wasn't accustomed to experiencing once again, particularly relating to muscle weakness, and that make me walk in a very clumsy fashion again. I have to figure out what that's about. And so there's just all kinds of puzzles that I have to think about and help the doctors think through, and that takes time. But, you know, we're in the hands of God, and I think I'm reconciled to that, and we'll see how it goes.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Cardinal, thank you.
Archbishop Cupich will have time for a couple of questions, one-on-ones in the back. If you would see Susan, if you would like to talk to him for a few minutes, please know that it's just going to be one or two questions because there's a lot of people in a limited amount of time. And we will set stuff up before the 18th as well as time permits. So thank you very much this morning for coming.
And there we are, wrapping up the press conference, introducing the new Archbishop Designate, Blase Cupich, coming here from Spokane. Archbishop Designate Cupich was specific on a couple of issues, but on most questions he said he has a lot to learn about Chicago, and he wants to talk to retiring Cardinal Francis George to get answers to some of those questions in the days ahead. So that's it live from the near north side. Larry Yellen reporting. Stay tuned to Fox News tonight after the college football game for the latest on today's developing stories. And also check out myfoxchicago.com for the latest on the appointment of Archbishop Designate